Okay, so today we're going to be relipping Nikita's Work Rezax IIs. So we're going to be taking it from this 18 by 11 plus 0 with a 4.5-inch lip down to this 18 by 9.5 plus 19 with a 3-inch lip. And the way we're going to be doing that is just pretty simple. We're going to take apart this wheel and then swap out the 4.5-inch lip for a 3-inch lip, and we'll get the size that we want. Nikita's baller enough to have his own tire machine at his house, so we're going to be taking off the tire off of this one in order to disassemble it.
Got it. Pull that over. That's pretty easy. There you go. Boom, you're done. Ta-da!
Okay, now we'll get to the actual relipping part. Now what we're going to be removing is the valve stem, which you basically just undo that one nut over there. Valve stem within. That valve stem that just pushes out from that side, and then all of the hardware slips off the end. Now that Nikita's taken off all of the wheel weights over here, we can actually access all of the nuts from the backside. Now the socket you're going to need to remove all these is a 8mm 12-point, and that's different from your normal socket because your typical socket is just a 6-point right here. And so these ones, they actually have double the amount of points in it, making it a 12-point. Simple math, bros. And these go right here, and then you can just hit that and then remove all of the nuts and bolts hardware.
And depending on how much of a stance guy you are, you can just wrap this in masking tape so you don't scratch your pretty lips.
It's nice just to take the extra measure. Could save you in the long run. It's not even expensive. And on the back side over here, we're going to be holding everything with a 10mm wrench. So just hold that right there and then undo the front side with your 8mm 12-point. Just like that, and that's how you undo your hardware, and then just keep all that, of course. In order to split these wheels, we're going to have to cut this seam of silicone right here, which is used as a sealant, so that way no air escapes. We're going to have to cut it to the side over here in 2 pieces, and that's because this particular wheel is a sandwich mount face, and so what that means is that this face is actually sandwiched in between the lip as well as the barrel. And so there's 2 seams over here. There's one from the barrel to the face as well as from the face to the lip. So you're going to have to cut right along here to split that seam, and then you're gonna have to cut right along here to split that seam. If you had a different type of wheel that, you know, mounts from the front, then you'd only have to split the one seam directly in the center in between the lip and the barrel because there is, you know, no center sitting in there. Anyways, we're gonna have to split this seam, so we're just gonna take a razor and then run it all along down it. Kind of like that, and just continue that, and that's how we'll split it. Both areas have been split now with the razor, and we can actually physically split it by hitting it apart. That's the lip removed.
Oh, stop.
Okay. And now you can see that here's the center, and then here's the barrel. Now that this seam is split, we're going to have to apply a new bead of silicone over here, which means we're going to have to remove the old bead of silicone. The easiest way that we've found to do that is just to run a razor right there and essentially cut off all your silicone. Here's the face too. You can see, just run it along the top. So you basically remove all that right there. Continue going along it. You can also go along the edge, clean all that off. And also remember to, you know, do this away from you, not pulling into you like I'm doing right now. That's just for a safety precaution. Now you can see that the lip is pretty much clean. It still has some residue from the sealant, and we want to make sure all that is clean before applying the new one. So what we found pretty easy is to take a red Scotch-Brite pad and you rub that in the area, and then as you can see, it goes from having all this leftover sealant on it to being nice and clean and essentially ready for sealant after wiped it down with something. Now on the faces here, you can see them. Same thing with these ones. As you can see, now it's clean. So I'm going to continue doing that throughout the entire thing. Also, something to note is that just be careful when you're using this. So if you do this a lot, obviously it could mess up your surface finish on your wheels here. However, this is way better than doing a wire brush. It is probably one of the fastest and easiest ways to get this super clean. And on top of that, none of this clamping area is going to be seen on this specific wheel, so it doesn't really matter. This could honestly have no coating on it at all, and it'll still be perfectly fine as far as aesthetics go. All right, now as you can see, everything is cleaned off now. You can see the face all here. There's no silicone on any of the mating surfaces, as well as the top. There's no sealant. Now before we move on to actually assembling the wheels, I just want to talk about a few things. So the first thing is this barrel. This barrel right here, we're going to be reusing the stock barrel that came on this, and that's because Nikita, when he picked out the sizes, he knew that he would be able to keep these barrels and then just change the lip size and then get an 18 by 9.5 plus 19, which is a perfect offset for Wisefab, which he has on his car now. And good on him for that, because then it saves him money because he doesn't have to buy 2 new barrels as well, so that saves him about 400 bucks. Moving on to the lips, here's the new 3-inch lips. Nikita specifically got these from wheelflip.com and then picked them up in person. As you can see right here, they actually have a cutout specifically for these works, and it's cut out halfway through the lip in order to accommodate the valve stem that protrudes from the back and slips in through here. In comparison, here is the lip that the previous owner of these wheels, when he rebuilt the wheels, he upgraded the lips and he actually didn't get that cutout on there, and that's just an improper way to build these specific wheels. So just something to take in mind, that when you're ordering your lips, make sure you don't just get a standard 40-hole lip. Actually look at your wheel and see if it requires a cutout in the lip or not, and then actually have the cutout cut into your lip depending on your situation. Okay, now that we've covered barrels and lips, let's go on to sealing it. So sealing it up, because this is a sandwich mount again, we are going to do the barrel down here. We're going to make sure that this valve stem slot, remember that I just talked about on the lip, is lined up with the valve stem slot on the faces over here. And then the valve stem slot again on the lip. So this is the wheel right just before assembly, all stacked up like this. Now what I'm going to talk about is sealing it up. So to seal it up, there's 2 different applications of the sealant that you could do. The first one is just with dry fitting everything. And by dry fitting, I mean you don't put any silicone in between any of these bolt holes, and you actually just line the faces up like this, and then you just put the lip on top and then bolt them together. The second option would be to put silicone in between this contact area right here, and that gives it a little bit better seal. Something to note about it though is that these specific wheels are being built for drifting, and because of that we expect the lips on these to get curbed a lot and bent a lot, and so we're not actually putting any sealant in between, so that way it's a lot easier to split these wheels. Also, the previous owner that had these wheels did the same exact method where he only applied sealant on the outside. So that's just something to note when you're rebuilding your wheels, is whether or not you want to have the sealant in between your different layers of wheels. Now that all that's covered, we can actually start assembling it. All these surfaces, of course, are wiped down right now with brake cleaner, all cleaned and dried. Okay. Put the lip on. Of course, making sure that the valve stem cutout is aligned. Put 2 guide bolts in right now, so when we actually tap everything together, it aligns like it should. We've just given it a few light taps, and what we're going to do now is actually put all of the hardware inside the wheels, so that way we can start clamping it down using the screws rather than smacking the brand new lip that we just put on here. So what we're going to do now is go around the wheel, and we're going to do like an 8-star pattern, I would say. So we're going to go and do 8 points along here, evenly distributed, going from one side to the other, in order to clamp the face and lip and barrel all together. And we're going to do that before actually going around and tightening everything. So I don't think we quite followed that 8-star pattern that we had planned. We kind of just did everything in order to make it all tight over here because there were a little bit of gaps in the beginning. So now you can see that there is no gap in between all the faces, lip, and barrel. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to hand tighten everything, just going around in a circular motion. And what I mean by hand tighten is we're going to take this small impact driver and we're just going to very lightly tighten it down. And we're talking just like basically one impact and then stop. The torque setting specified by Work for these bolts is 19 foot-pounds each. This impact doesn't get anywhere near that, and we know because we actually have to turn it quite a bit after when we're torquing it to actually make it reach the 19 foot-pounds. So anyways, we're going to go around the wheel, circular motion, and just do basically like hand tightening it with the impact. Now these are all hand tightened, we can go ahead and torque them. So 19 foot-pounds, like I said, and we are going to do our expensive torque wrench right there. Now we're going to do our 8-star pattern again, going across it, and then after that we'll just go around all the way. Another thing to note is when you're doing assembly, a lot of people like to use blue Loctite. When I previously did a full rebuild on my BBS RSs, I also did blue Loctite on all these threads. Now Nikita specifically thinks that these wheels are going to come apart within 1 year because he's just going to end up needing to replace the lips on it. So because of that, he's not putting any blue thread lock on his hardware, so that way it's easier to remove in the future. However, if you had a daily driver and let's say you're going to put maybe 10-20,000 miles on it, might be a good thing to do some blue Loctite on it. Now we're going to go and torque this all the way around. And there we go, everything is now torqued. And we can go ahead and start sealing it up now and applying our sealant over here. Good. For sealing it up, we're going to run a tape around the wheel and we are going to basically mask off the area that just needs to have the sealant on it. Sweet. Good job to Nikita on that.
Naka-san will be proud.
Naka-san will be proud. And now we're just going to rub the edges to make sure that they're sealed so it makes a nice line. All right, and everything's already been cleaned, but we're just going to wipe it down really quick to make sure there's no real like dust or dirt on it. The sealant that we're using is basically just off the wheelflip.com website. So what we're going to do is we're just going to apply a bead of sealant over here and then smooth it over with our hand and then make a nice smooth line. That's fairly smooth, so now we can remove the tape. So now we have a nice line over here. What I'm going to do also is just feather out the edges with my hand. That way there's no rough edges for anything to get caught on, just in case you debead a wheel and then it accidentally pulls on the sealant. What we're going to do next is also do the valve stem over here. We're going to put that back. So I just take a little bit of the sealant and I just dab it around the valve stem like so. Because a lot of times these ones have old seals on the valve stems. So you just putting a little bit of sealant there helps it seal up just in case the original seal on the valve stem is bad. I'll just do that on the inside.
Holding it.
So as you can see, there's our bead of sealant. There's our valve stem in with sealant around it as well. Fairly nice centered bead. And that right there is going to keep any air that's, you know, in this chamber inside the tire from escaping through the different pieces of the wheels. Perfect. So this is the before with the 4.5-inch lip, and then this is the after with the new 3-inch lip. And as you can see, it took it from an 18 by 11 down to an 18 by 9.5. What's that?
Don't know if you...
So if you want to play it on the safe side, you should wait, you know, about 24 hours before you actually go and mount some tires up on these. For us, we're probably going to push it. We're probably going to wait until it's about, you know, 6 hours of drying, and then we'll mount up tires. You know, just use common sense. As long as it's fairly hard, it should be all right.
Good job.
There we go. Wheel has its new lip on there, all sealed up, mounted, good tire. Sweet.
Here's coming with it. Okay.
There's the new lip.
This looks wicked from here.